All right, it is 6:07 p.m. I'm going to call this meeting to order. My name is Matt Pianka. I'm the chairman of the city's zoning hearing board. With me tonight is members Anna Bianco and Mr. Claude Phipps. We also have the city's law bureau represented by Mr. Neil Grover and the planning bureau by Mr. Jeffrey Knight. Okay, for tonight we also have the presence of a court reporter. The court reporter is here because the zoning hearing board is more formal than the planning commission. Court reporter is making a transcript in the event of an appeal to the Court of Common Pleas. The zoning hearing board is like a court of law. The zoning hearing board's decision must be based on facts and law, not on the popularity or unpopularity of the project or what seems to the board to be a good or bad project. In other words, the applicant must meet a legal burden of proof that proves the elements of a variance or special exception. The law is the city's zoning code and the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code. For anyone in the audience tonight and everyone who resides or owns property close to the subject property and has something legally relevant to say, you will have an opportunity to speak. Audience members must speak one at a time and they must not interrupt the testimony that is being transcribed by the court reporter. We're going to start with two continued cases, 2533 and 2534. Want to make a motion to continue both of those unless you want to, or would you like to say something on those?
Yeah, let me just reference, there was a request for 2533 and 2534. There was an email dated November 2, 2022 requesting a continuance until the it says the next scheduled meeting, which would be in January.
That's 2533 and 2534. I'm making a motion to continue to January of 2023. Do I have a second? Seconded by Ms. Bianco. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Do we want to address 2540 before we begin or at the end of the?
That just withdrawn.
That is the withdrawn.
Okay, you don't need to do it.
Okay.
Yep.
2540 on the agenda has been withdrawn by the applicant. That's going to bring up 2538, a variance of special exception application for 430 Riley Street. There. Will the solicitor please read in the record the documents that are in the city's file?
Chairman, B1 is the proof of publication in the Patriot News for November 6, 2022 and November 13, 2022. B2, the letter dated November 16, 2022, sent from the planning director, Mr. Knight, to the applicant notifying of the hearing. B3 is the hearing notice posting on the property that was on October 26, 2022. B4 is the applicant's notification letter and the certificate of mailing to the required neighbors. B5 was the application for the mixed use development with an attached narrative. B6 was a site plan, 15 pages. B7 is several deeds establishing the applicant's standing for the requested zoning relief. B8, City of Harrisburg zoning hearing board decision dated April 1, 2021, approving applicant's prior proposal and application for zoning relief. B9 is the Planning Bureau case report, and B10 is the City of Harrisburg Planning Commission resolution. So we have exhibits B1 through B10.
Thank you, Steve. I'm going to now swear in the zoning administrator. Now, if you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
If you could please briefly summarize the case, the issues, and what the city's position is on the case.
Sure. So the applicant is proposing to construct a 7-story mixed-use development featuring 142 apartments, a restaurant and coffee shop, commercial space, and a 171-space parking garage. This is a revision to a proposal previously reviewed and approved by the zoning hearing board in February 2021. The current proposal is founded on the zoning relief granted during that review and requires the approval of additional requests for zoning relief, specifically the following: special exception for relief from the off-street parking requirements for the project, and a variance to exceed the density regulations for the proposed multifamily dwelling use. Provide some context for comparison, the former proposal involves the construction of a 7-story mixed-use development featuring commercial space for a grocery store, restaurant, coffee shop, and office uses, 85 residential apartments, and an approximately 500-space parking garage, along with associated site and access improvements. Primary difference is the loss of a grocery store and office space, the addition of approximately 57 apartments, and a downsized parking facility. The Planning Commission recommended that the zoning hearing board approve the request by a unanimous vote with the following conditions. At least a week prior to the zoning hearing board meeting, the applicant will submit written agreements, proposals for the car share service and mass transit subsidy they have referenced in their proposal, that the Planning Bureau has time to review the proposals and ascertain whether they meet the requirements of the zoning code. And I can confirm that the applicants have provided a draft agreement with a car sharing service and have also proposed to put language into the final zoning hearing board decision with respect to providing a transit subsidy. The applicant will redesign the Riley Street facade to incorporate a second entrance into the retail space further to the west to better activate the southern frontage of the property. Northern frontage of the property will likewise be redesigned to create a more attractive streetscape along the Boyd Street urban meadow and to incorporate a secure street level bike parking area. And I can confirm that the applicants have provided a revised plan set to incorporate those elements as noted in the condition. The applicant will install a secure bike storage area between the secondary stairwell and the coffee shop cafe space along the Boyd Street urban meadow for use by visitors and staff of businesses on site. Current bike storage is located in the basement, meaning it is largely inaccessible to visitors and business customers. And again, I have confirmed that the revised site plan shows this location. Fourth condition, given the entire site will be paved, the project will need to plant 15 trees per section 7-307.12B of the zoning code. The applicant will coordinate with the city arborist on the selection and location of trees in the surrounding rights of way. And the applicant at the Planning Commission meeting has indicated their acceptance of that condition. And, I think it would hinge on the eventual approval of this request, where exactly those trees would be located in the surrounding streets. And the final condition is that the applicant will coordinate with the Department of Public Works to confirm the appropriate size and location of refuse collection on site. I think in their site plan, they show individual toter bins and with a room where those would be stored out within the property itself or within the building itself and presumably brought out during trash collection day. And that's just a condition to make sure that the Public Works is aware of that and is approved that or would require something like a dumpster. So the Planning Commission recommended by unanimous vote that the zoning hearing board approve the request for the following reasons. The project proposes infill development that reflects the character of the developing 6th Street corridor to the east in terms of building massing, use, and design, and prospective projects along Riley Street to the west. The location will take advantage of proximity to major corridors, specifically Riley Street and 6th Street, to realize the full value of the project site. The building will be designed to front Riley Street to ensure that impacts on the residential neighborhood to the north will be mitigated. The project will be topped by a green roof across the full building footprint, incorporating a fairly unique stormwater management element for projects of this size to reduce impacts on the local stormwater infrastructure and reduce the urban heat island effect generated by new development. Finally, the project will bring significant benefits to the neighborhood, including the removal of blighted buildings, the development of vacant lots, the activation of the Boyd Street urban meadow, and the addition of units to the housing inventory of the surrounding neighborhood and the city generally. And if the conditions of the Planning Bureau are adopted, the project will have positive impacts on pedestrians and bicyclists. It will improve the streetscapes along the public rights of way that surround the site.
Thank you, sir. The applicant is here. Who's all going to testify? I just want to make sure I swear everyone in.
Sure. Again, Ambrose Hines, I'm an attorney with Stevens and Lee. With me tonight is a representative from the applicant, Kevin Baird. Also, Rustin Oler, who's an architect, he will be testifying. And finally, Greg Holtzman will be testifying as well, if necessary. So that's what it is.
Yeah, if everybody could please state your name, your residential address, and your business title if relevant, and then I will swear everyone in. For the court reporter, please.
Kevin Baird, 29 Old Cover Bridge Road, Down Square, PA. Applicant.
Rustin Oler, OHLER, address 1405 Wharton Street, Philadelphia, PA. Greg Holtzman, Project Manager for Civil Engineering, 3330 North Third Street in Harrisburg.
If everybody could please raise your right hands. You swear or affirm. You swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you.
Let the record reflect that Mr. Baird did raise his right hand.
Sorry, yes.
Okay,
I just, you agree with the facts and the issues that were stated by the zoning administrator? Are you okay with the conditions that were?
well, we can attest we're fine with the conditions. I did have a few clarification items, so let me just make a brief introduction. The parcel is the project site is actually 40 parcels that will be combined into a single parcel, approximately 1.01 acres, zoned RM medium density, residential medium density. There were several older buildings on the property as pursuant to the prior approval, which was approved back in April of 2021. There was a demolition of certain of those buildings as a part of that project. So if this board might recall, that project proposed a building with almost an identical footprint. The interior of the building is what is being revised under this current proposal. The height of the building is 6 stories, not 7 stories. That may have been an error in our application. But if you look at the plans that we're going to present tonight, it's a 6-story building, and the number of parking spaces provided is 173, but we'll have the architect confirm that number as well. The land development has already been approved for the project itself, but again, we're talking about additional or really revised uses from what was previously approved in 2021. Instead of 80 units residential, the building would have 142 units residential, including 13 affordable housing units within the building. The prior project had proposed 500 parking spaces as part of the federal courthouse build out, and unfortunately that contract was awarded elsewhere. So that's the reason for the change and the need to go to more residential and a reduction of the commercial and retail space. The relief requested is really 3-pronged. The first is a special exception on multifamily use, which was previously approved, but since we're increasing the number of units, we've asked for that relief again. The second request is a dimensional variance related to the minimum lot area for multifamily. And again, that relates to the fact that there's an increase in the number of units. That relief was also granted in the prior approval, but we've asked for that again, given the increase in the number of units. And then the final special exception is a reduction in the required parking as it relates to the commercial area, primarily because obviously instead of the 500 spaces, which was previously proposed, we're only doing 172 spaces, which would be enough to meet the residential needs, but not meet the requirement for the commercial areas that would be in the building. I've provided a series of exhibits to the board. It's numbered 1 through 4. We can mark those as A1 through 4. There's some duplication to what the solicitor had presented as zoning hearing board exhibits, but for the sake of completeness, we've asked that those be moved into the record as soon as they're identified by the various witnesses. And with that, I'm going to start with my first witness, Mr. Baird. Can you just state your name for the record again?
Kevin Baird,
And what is your role with
managing
Riley Street Management?
Riley Street.
And you're familiar with the application that's been filed here? And is that the document that's been marked as Exhibit A1 in our packet? And with respect to the property, just for the sake of the record, are the deeds identified as Exhibit 2, the deeds to all 40 parcels that are involved? And Riley, 400 Riley Street LLC currently owns all of those properties, correct? Thank you. And the project proposes a redevelopment of an entire city block, and that's bounded by Riley Street, Boyd Street, Fulton Street, Fifth Street. Is that correct? And this was previously approved for zoning relief in April of 2021. Is that correct? And is that prior approval been marked as exhibit 3? And since that was approved, has there anything been done on the property work-wise?
Yeah, we've done a bit of clearing.
Demoed. And then we just secured it with a gate.
And what is the impetus behind the change in the interior of the building?
Sure, it's purely, situational and economic, meaning with the COVID was the biggest impact. COVID did a number on commercial parking garages, and with, I think, probably a good percentage of federal and state employees continue to work remotely. It pushed the financeability of the project to a degree. And then the other was just, we were not successful in obtaining the GSA parking RFP, which was a big surprise for me. 11th hour, FIA jumped in with a lot that they own and, undercut the process, which was disappointing, but it was important for financing. So, and then I think, just construction costs and whatnot, sort of played into it.
And as a result of those occurrences, the focus of the project has to increase the residential, is that correct?
Yes,
And there will still be commercial areas or commercial retail and coffee
Yeah.
shop or restaurant uses associated with this building, correct?
correct. Yep. Restaurant, coffee shop, as well as parking and residential and potential commercial office. So we have that approved.
And you heard Mr. Knight testify about a potential ride share agreement or car share agreement. And have you had discussions with a company related to a potential car sharing agreement on this project?
Yes, the companies Get Around, Greenworks, who has a project in the pipeline right now with Harrisburg, made the introduction, and they are very interested in supplying cars and services, rideshare services for both projects.
And you also heard Mr. Knight testify regarding the condition about having commercial tenant leases provide for employees working within the building to have a subsidy toward
Yes,
bus transit passes. Is that correct?
yep, absolutely.
That's all I have for Mr. Baird, and we can have the architect testify about the project. Unless there's questions for the board of Mr. Baird.
You're on. Okay. I'm going back to the document, the special exception requirement. Your original plan was to have a grocery store in the commercial space. Now you're saying not obtain a tenant, grocery tenant, so you're going to convert those to apartments, thus reducing is that reducing the need for the amount of 230 one off-street parking spots?
So the commercial space has been reduced from what was originally proposed. And Mr. Baird, maybe this is the better way. Has there just been a decision not to have grocery in that area?
After a long and arduous search, keep up empty. Ellie was not yet, but there's a lot of interest. Density. So with the removal of the 23,000 square foot grocery store, for sure, it reduced commercial park requirements.
My first question, and this originally came in from the zoning board April of 2021
21.
with a, was it 12, it has a life expectancy of 12 months. So it's, but this, if I read this right, that because it wasn't actually in the timeframe.
Big time work.
Okay, so there was work continued on it. Okay, good. On the commercial space, still, you're still planning for a restaurant, coffee shop,
Yeah.
and the changes, I think that's something about the, because of the cost now. Okay, we're losing, the parking tenant from the federal government and probably the grocery tenant. It costs you to basically look at your cost curve on this, or would that affect the rentals? That if you put this up, will that have some type of effect on the rental properties or the apartments?
Not having a grocery store? Possibly.
You're
But
gonna get your money. You got to get your money back somewhere along the line. It's the length of time.
We're-
to recoup that money.
we're betting that there's a large demand residential apartments. So I think that without the grocery store project, prices we anticipate is just based on what we know the demands are.
That's all.
Just one question that I always just say, can you define affordable for those 11 affordable apartments? Which,
Yeah, I probably can't.
Okay.
My CFO could, but I think that the county or the city sets it. It's formula based on average median income. I think it's 30% of rent, whatever it is.
I was gonna ask, my follow-up then was gonna be who's gonna oversee that those 11 remain affordable? Because I know the city's working through some, they did the bonus density, but there was really no follow-up to how it's maintained or.
So our, the city solicitor can probably speak a bit more to the current status of the city's affordable housing legislation. I believe this was addressed at a recent city council meeting too. It was less about establishing the process or the program than about fine tuning and addressing some curative aspects.
Sorry, Neil, I asked a question.
I'm doing a couple of things.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. City council is going to vote tomorrow night on amendments to the affordable housing legislation that will cure, we think, the problem that we had technically with it. So that will come effective in 20 days.
Okay.
So in
There we
December,
go.
that will be law. So
There we go. That answers my own. Okay,
Just for a point of clarification, I believe the application has 13 units. Is that? Is it 11?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's essentially 20%.
Kind of. Gotcha.
It was approved for 80.
Thank you. Forward.
Hi, how are you? Rustin Oler, Principal of Harmony Architecture. Yep, so page. Was labeled number 4 on the. Yeah,
That's what they do. They break stuff.
Yeah. I broke last.
the $10,000 more.
Haven't agreed to pay for it.
At least it's what it's budgeted.
All right, hopefully that works. So this will orient the first floor plan within the site. as you had mentioned, there's no change to the prior approval as far as lot coverage. We're also maintaining the vehicular access points, so that the basement garage is accessed off Fulton, as is the loading. And then the first floor parking garage is centered in off of Fifth Street here, so keeping that vehicular circulation. Commercial frontage still, and we're just about 10,000 square feet, just under 10,000 square feet of retail space there. So slightly less than what was there before for a grocery store, but still a very sizable amount. So accommodate, one larger tenant or 2 or 3 smaller tenants. And then we're keeping the commercial space at Fifth and Boyd in the continuation of the urban meadow. And our frontage is blazing along that as well. As we go up through the plans, which I have here. The primary changes to the upper floors, where previously a bulk of the building was for a parking garage. It's now been replaced with residential units, which are more light and air. By not having the garage in the center of the building anymore. So that's the 142 units, typical floor plate at the upper floors with amenity space and roof deck at the second floor here, surrounded by green roof. And as they had mentioned, at the top of the building is also green roof as well, to deal with stormwater management. No change to height of the building, maintaining the prior approvals. And here's the parking plans for the 173 cars. So all basement parking here, and first floor parking behind the commercial, between the 2 commercial spaces here. And then just, you guys can see overall facade of the building is Riley Street here, adding a secondary entrance that planning had wanted. Basically, it's brick, corrugated metal panel with no panels, glazing, and then every unit has a balcony as well. So, but same height, same massing, same lot coverage, same vehicular access points. Did I miss anything? Cover.
Just real quickly, the plans that you're referencing here are the same as what's in the packet as Exhibit 4, correct?
And if any has questions on it.
And if you just go to the site plan real quick, the ground floor site plan, which has a project summary in the corner. And the total number of proposed residential units is now 100.
Correct.
And the total number of parking stalls, as you referenced, is 173. Is that correct? Right. And can you just describe the bicycle parking, where that's going to be relocated?
Yeah, so basically, we didn't relocate bike parking. So we have a large bicycle basement, access to all class 1 bicycle stalls. At the request of planning commission, we had an additional bike room, which we open to the public, has a dedicated stripped pedestrian friendly pathway in the garage, as well as direct access to the urban meadow. So somebody could ride their bike there, lock securely inside the building, lock their bike up on an accessible path, leave right through the bike room and go out and enjoy the urban meadow and pathway.
And just on that same chart, with respect to residential parking requirement, it's 1.2 per unit. Is that correct? And so that would be how many parking spaces?
Residential parking requirements 171.
So the request for the special exception relates to what would be required for the commercial areas. Is that correct? Any questions from the board for this witness?
Do you have any perspective on what the commercial might be? An idea what might go in the commercial space?
That's for Mr. Baird.
I guess. Okay,
Could you go to the microphone because it's being recorded?
oh,
It's an existing.
but that's for the cafe.
Yeah.
What about for the larger?
So we did prior, and we're still hoping to revive that restaurant. But no commitments as of yet. Don't anticipate a lot of struggle there with the federal courthouse and some of the needs. I think that's
So my question is then, if you're coming to use the commercial space that fronts Riley, yeah. Concern's not really the coffee shop. I understand how that's gonna work out. Can you park in the parking garage area? Will there be spaces set aside
Yes.
for, okay,
yes.
okay. Okay. But that's. Okay. I see in the plans around the units, there's amenity rooms. There's some sort of amenities you're thinking of putting in. Yeah.
So the typical residential floor, second floor has a larger amount. We typically, we're looking at a gym and basically just like a lounge space, so some couches, TVs. And then at every upper floor in the corner, you can see a small.
Breakout room.
Yeah, so it's basically like a little, in this corner here.
Yeah.
So there's a little breakout room, so. It'll have different things in each floor, so one will be laid out like a conference room, the other one will be laid out like a small living room, love seat, couch, TV. So just if you need to get out of your unit, have a Zoom call, during the workday. Just want to go watch a sporting event and not bother your significant other, I think you can do that in that space.
Thank you. Thank you. Last witness, real quick, Mr. Greg Holtzman. It's your name for the record.
Greg Holtzman,
And what's your company?
BL Companies. I'm a project manager.
And are you a registered landscaper?
Yes, I am.
And are you familiar with the site and surrounding area?
Yes, I am.
Familiar with the city zoning requirements, relevant to this application?
Yes, I am.
And you're familiar with the application we filed for 3 requests for relief. We just want to run through the criteria and demonstrate how we comply with those. Are you familiar with those provisions?
Yes, I am.
So with respect to the first special exception criteria on dwelling multifamily, was this the same request for relief that was sought in the original application in 2021?
Yes,
And the only difference is that this now provides for 142 units versus the 80 units that was originally proposed.
that is correct.
And section 7-309.25 sets out requirements for special exception for that use within the residential multifamily. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And with respect to those standards, have you reviewed those standards?
Yes, I have.
And do those really pertain to this type of project?
No, those are modifications of existing building.
And are there any other standards that would be applicable to a use where you're doing a new project?
No.
Okay, so the second request for relief was on a dimensional variance for minimum lot area, and the size of this lot, 1.01 acre. Does that meet the requirement for the minimum lot area for residential multifamily?
For our proposed use, no.
And is it possible to increase the size of this project site?
In my opinion, no. Various constraints of the streets and layouts and utilities.
And is that a unique physical condition, in your opinion, that creates an unnecessary hardship in meeting that requirement?
In my opinion, yes.
And can the redevelopment of this property occur without within the strict conformity of the ordinance?
No, anything that's more would probably add additional variances or special exceptions.
And does the proposed variance on minimum lot area change the essential character of the neighborhood in your opinion?
No, it does not.
And is the requested relief the minimum necessary to afford relief for this project?
It is.
And the final special exception criteria related to the reduction of the required parking, and you heard the testimony from Mr. Rustin that the number of spaces is sufficient to comply with residential. Are you in agreement with that?
Yes, for the residential, yes.
And the additional 10,000 plus square feet of commercial space, spaces are not being provided specifically for that to meet that requirement. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And we base that on a retail requirement of 1 space per 200 square feet
That is correct.
plus 1 employee.
That's correct.
And if you look at the provisions of section 7-3278, is there adequate commercial or public parking in the vicinity of this project?
In my opinion, yes, there is.
And are you aware of any bus transit stations in the immediate vicinity?
Yes, I think CAT has a 3rd Street and also 6th Street.
And is it expected that the residents will not necessarily use all of the parking that's provided for residential uses within this building?
That's what's anticipated, yes.
And you heard the testimony from Mr. Baird that the applicant is proposing a ride share agreement or arrangement for residents. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And has the applicant also agreed to provide for a subsidy or requirement for a subsidy for its commercial tenants within the building?
My understanding is yes.
Now, with respect to the general special exception criteria, 7-3.236, does this proposal to reduce parking conflict with any city ordinance, state or federal law or regulation to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge.
And is adequate ingress and egress being provided for the project?
In my opinion, yes.
And do you know of any significant public safety hazards that would result from a reduction in the required parking?
Not to my knowledge.
Are you aware of any significant adverse effect on the surrounding neighborhood as a result of the reduction in parking?
No, I am not.
Is there any historically significant architecture on the site?
Not that we're aware of.
Has adequate site design and screening of refuse area being provided under this current plan?
Per the architect's plan, yes.
And is it expected in the engineering that there will be spillover lighting?
There are no proposed street lighting for this project. It will be building mounted.
And in your opinion, are the environmental performance standards of the ordinance, will they be met with respect to the land development and this project?
Yes.
No more questions.
One question, you stated with commercial property there. If that's developed parking for that commercial property, up for those, that commercial piece, where will that parking be? Will you provide off-street parking, or will you use this street and part of Riley Street to handle the parking requirements for that?
So my understanding is that the equation for residential units is 1.2. So it's our understanding that not every resident will have a vehicle. So there will be open spaces in that parking structure Those spaces won't have like a specific number, so apartment 10 won't have a specific space. So there will be some flex spaces, so to speak, in addition to bike sharing too, will be available.
Will that parking area be full entry? And since we're talking over 100 parking slots, only, how do you restrict that to only the occupants of the building?
Yes, it'll be controlled. It'll be food waste. Access.
My concern is that with the courthouse on Riley Street, they may have their parking taken care of, but there's gonna be some overflow. Depends on whatever case load becomes in there. That overflow is gonna go down Riley Street. And there's also an apartment complex or a townhouse complex that sits on Riley too. Across from the proposed courthouse. So I just wanna make sure that, again, big if something happens, you've got other parking spots. Okay, so so people will be basically parking in residence parking spots or wherever commercial businesses come in. There will be adequate parking.
Understood. So one of the concerns, what I'm hearing is that you might have some visitors going to the courthouse that are parking in our structure. So I think maybe what you're gonna do is like in other cities, they do have like tags that say, hey, I was here for commercial use or something of that nature to help identify, to deter, folks from other uses parking here just for a parking space.
Okay.
Nothing at the moment. I don't have anything else at the moment.
Just move for entry my exhibits.
Let me just ask, Mr. Knight, as far as going through the part, with regard to the residential units, it's 142. So it's one spot per unit and one for every 5, which would be 170, right?
I think, yeah, 170.
Okay. And then, and the provider is 173. And the whole, all of it though together requires what, 231?
Right, there'd be an extra 55 spaces for the commercial based on the calculation that. So. What was the number you said, 231?
I just use that just because I thought that's what I did. See, I seem to think that was at planning, wasn't that what the?
Let's have the architect answer because he's got the.
Rustin Bowlers, the required.
Well, if I could interject quick, it's difficult to ascertain exactly what the off-street parking is, especially because some of the commercial space along Riley Street is as yet kind of unassigned. And there are different regulations for different types of uses. So I mean, they may be taking, I'm not sure where they're getting the final number from, it may be an average of various uses in the zoning code. It may be kind of based on like a retail store use or something like that. But I think ultimately the number of parking required would be dependent upon what exact use goes into that space.
That's correct. We utilized a retail standard at 1 for 200 spaces plus 1 per employee.
Okay. And that's what I think though, that I was even looking at, going back to the application though, that it was filed. I think that's what said 230, 231, but also the one, it had 171 and it was actually 170.
Yeah. So the numbers we're
just-
giving you tonight are the accurate numbers. If there was an error in the application, I apologize. We'll
So what we're going is 226 total.
226 total.
And 173 is what is in
Is proposed.
off street on lot, on the property.
Correct.
Okay.
And one more point just to note, like the retail parking requirements are actually fairly intensive with respect to off-street parking, less so than something like office use. If they put office, it'd be one every, I believe, 500 square feet. So they're actually using one of the more intensive requirements, uses for requirement.
Okay.
Okay, I think I have a question then about parking, and I think it's for Mr. Baird. I'm assuming this isn't the first multifamily building you've built. Out of the ones you've been involved in, have you seen all the if you built to this type of standard in a building, have you seen all the parking used by residential? And do you have an idea of what your residence to parking ratio is in your portfolio?
That is, there hasn't been a multifamily permanent pool in Harrisburg for a project like this in 50 years.
Sure.
So my analog.
Maybe in the Philly area, I guess.
Yes, so that's
Question.
what I wanted to, my analog is Philadelphia. Yes, must have designed some of my projects before. This project in Philadelphia would require a fourth parking requirement here. And that's part of the challenge of building in Harrisburg, quite honestly. It's about $40,000 for parking space these days to build new construction. But even at a 25%, in Philadelphia, not all of those parking spaces would be absorbed. So if you had, 45 spaces for a project like this, 35, they wouldn't all be absorbed because they're paying for these spaces. It sort of shifts the culture, to be honest with you. That's not a bad thing.
And then question for Neil, because they talked about, I think for Neil, they talked about some charging to get in and out if you're not a resident. SP Plus, they still do that? I just want to clarify that point
So the
because
answer can't be answered sitting here. They were, SP Plus was deep in these discussions at one point.
right
Because of the federal.
I read that
courthouse.
news article.
That because that system is so upside down now because of the pandemic.
Right.
All I know is it's going to be different. I don't know what it's going to be.
Got it.
It won't be what is we have. It can't be what it is now because the Commonwealth can't go broke on it. So
Leave it at that. Okay, that's it for my question. Parking. Any more? Neil, Jeff, do you have any?
I do, and you may have
Okay.
touched on this when I was out, but I had to take a call. And this was in an email earlier, the section 7-323.5H, the 1-year expiration of the prior one. I just think I have an abundance of caution because it has not been tested ever. Is that it would, and only this board has the authority to give the extension of the prior application. When a new application is submitted, that it ought to be part of whatever consideration you do is to put an extension in there. Just because you don't want a technical detail hanging out in the wind that someone can challenge later and just get a hook on something from because we didn't vote on something. Yeah.
I would agree with that too. Thank you, Mr.
Sure.
And I'm gonna open this up to the public. If there's a neighbor who wishes to testify that they must live or own property in a close proximity to the applicant's property, if they want to come to the microphone and please state their name and address. Floor is open. Anyone to my right? Anyone to the center? And no one on the left. Okay. All right, we're gonna take a recess real quick, to talk about some legal. Yeah. meeting. Is there any other questions from the board? Anything else from city planning? There was a discussion about extending the approvals there at the end, and there was a decision in April 2021. So I'm going to make a motion to extend the decision that was made in April of 2021. Have a second? Seconded by Ms. Bianca. All in favor? Aye. And after that, I'm now going to make a motion to approve what's before us with the conditions that were set forth in the planning commission's resolution for approval. Do I have a second? Seconded by Phipps. All in favor? Aye. Resolution carried. Thank you. All right, I'm going to bring up 2539, a special exception application for 19.5 North 4th Street. After the applicant seated, if the solicitor would please read into the record the documents that are in the city's file.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Application 2539, B1 is proof of publication, November 6, 2022 and November 13, 2022. B2 is a letter dated November 16, 2022, sent from the planning director, Mr. Knight, to the applicant notifying of the hearing. B3 is a hearing notice posting on the property. It's on October 26, 2022. B4, applicant's notification letter and certificate of mailing to required neighbors. B5, application for a special exception for a community engagement center slash event space type use. B6, 3 photos of the interior of the property, 1 page. B7, plans of the proposal, 2 pages. B8 is a lease agreement between the property owner and the applicant establishing the standing, and we received one establishing that property owners Oshke, is that what it is? Oshke Properties, right? B9 is a deed dated October 29, 2020 between Jerry and Cherie Rogers and Oshke Properties LLC. B10, Planning Bureau case report, and B11, City of Harrisburg Planning Commission resolution. So we have exhibits B1 through B11.
All right, I just want to remind everyone that the zoning administrator is still sworn in from the previous case. Jeff, if you could please summarize the case, the issues, and what the city's position is on the case.
Sure. So the applicant is proposing to establish a community engagement center, which serves as a networking and business growth space, which is a use not specifically prohibited by the zoning code. It thus requires a special exception per section 7-303.11B of the zoning code. While some of the activities that you may have read about in the applicant's application or the Planning Bureau case report might seem to fall under one use or another, I think, and the applicant will probably speak a little bit to this, both the maybe types of uses and the activities that occur on site are a little open-ended, and I think that's understandable when you're going to be leasing space to others to have them use it for their own purposes. And so it was difficult to find a singular definition, use definition under which this could be classified. And likewise, I could have maybe looked into all the possible activities they're having on site, figure out how they were classified and whether they were permitted by right and whether therefore be a by right use. But it seems like the juxtaposition of both the types of uses that will occur on site and the activities that his tenants may be undertaking led me to say that this is really kind of a use not specifically prohibited in the zoning code, and thus bring it before the Planning Commission Zoning Hearing Board as a special exception. With that being said, the Planning Commission and by a unanimous vote and the Planning Bureau both recommend that the Zoning Hearing Board approve the request with the following conditions. The business will have hours of operation limited to 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Sunday, as outlined in the supplemental documentation provided by the applicant to mitigate potentially adverse impacts from the proposed use on surrounding residents. And this is really less a comment towards the applicant themselves than it is a recognition of the history of the property, which had had some unpermitted types of uses going on that resulted in complaints from residents who live on the floors above and in the buildings around. And so we just wanted to make sure to head that off and to mitigate that in the future. The applicant was kind of held to that, especially the 10 p.m. Ending time. And then no alcoholic beverage service or BYOB permit will be permitted on site to ensure the space functions in a business commercial capacity and does not produce the same adverse impacts as recent uses, though occasional events such as Third in the Berg may allow a licensed caterer. And again, that kind of speaks to the same intent to make sure that this is treated as a commercial, like a business networking space and not just kind of an event space, which is also kind of another classification that people try and get like some UIB club uses or nightclub uses through the zoning code. And so we wanted just to make sure that the business does not kind of transform into something like that. Although, as we do note, there are occasional activities like Third in the Berg, where an art gallery may have like little wine and stuff like that. And we don't want to prevent the applicant from being able to operate in a similar way for those special events. And the Planning Commission, by unanimous vote, and the Planning Bureau both recommend the Zoning Hearing Board approve the request for the following reasons. The applicant has engaged neighborhood stakeholders, including Harrisburg University, regarding potential events and activities on site to ensure that the business functions as a benefit to the local business and residential community. The proposed use will occupy a currently vacant space, which was previously operating as an illegal BYOB club, and will help activate the streetscape, enhance the vitality of the block, and provide an incubator for business growth and development while creating minimal impacts on the surrounding residential neighborhood. Finally, the proposed use will be similar in character and potential impacts to by right uses permitted in the DC district, such as business services, community center, and office uses, meeting the conditions for granting a special exception for a use not specifically.
All right. If each applicant could please state your full name, your residential address, and your business title.
Dijon Cole, 317 North Pfeffer, 317 Pfeffer Street, Harrisburg, PA. Applicant.
Richard Crum, 3243 Vesta Lane, Harrisburg, PA, partner.
Teron Strawbridge, 1837 North 4th Street, partner.
If you could all please raise your right hand. You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Affirmed. So please tell us about your application here.
So what we are looking for is a special variance in regards to the use that we will be providing to the 4th Street area. We will be catering to community organizations, professional organizations, entrepreneurs, and creatives. We will have a multi-use space that will mirror the University of Pittsburgh's Community Engagement Center. So with that, we will be catering to multiple different nonprofit organizations, business organizations, and professional organizations in the area to be able to utilize the space as meeting space, workshop space, training seminars can be held out of it. And we'll be also working with the organizations to be doing after school programming, networking mixers, and also workshops and luncheons to be held out of the space. That we will also be housing an art gallery down in our second level. We do have a ground level and a second basement level that will be hosting an art gallery that will always also be utilized.
So essentially what we will be doing on a small scale is project management for nonprofit organizations, SBEs, WBEs, and MBEs, and networking so to eventually and essentially assist them with connecting dots to the contractors. And if I could just, I gotta say, I'm sorry, I gotta say this. When we acquired the property, it was a very big task to clean up the reputation that was previously associated with that property. And so we took the challenge head on once we figured out kind of like what was there previously. And I am just grateful to be sitting next to these gentlemen who have been day in and day out working with that community to change the face of that property.
I also do have letter of intents from some individuals that we will be working with, if I can pass these.
Start with Mr. O'Connor, so you can enter it in as an exhibit.
Good evening, gentlemen. I can be heard? Okay, good. One question I did have, and I'm glad you addressed it. The previous reputation. So you're leasing the space. You have a 5-year lease, correct?
Correct.
How will you ensure there will be no violation of the restrictions that have been placed on, that we placed on the space? So you don't have a repeat occurrence of what happened a year ago, 2 years ago. And again, alcohol on premises. Okay.
Absolutely.
How do you guarantee?
Absolutely. So each individual who comes in, each tenant that will come and lease from us, our main goal for those tenants are to be nonprofit organizations or actual businesses. And in the contract, there will be specific guidelines on what's allowed and what's not allowed.
So it'll actually be stated in the document they sign in order to obtain your space.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm looking at the space and I remember here. I'm looking fine. It's pretty defining per se. Okay, but again, as a neighborhood area or a place for meeting, good. So that was my only concern. Okay, and you know, your documents need to clearly state that because you're the people in front of us. And you're going to be. Yes. Thank you.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, let me at least identify two exhibits, although we can. One, two letters of intent, one from Director of Operations at SCPA, Sickle Council, and the other from Harrisburg University NAACP Chapter President. So we can just mark those as applicant 1A1.
Is there thanks for bringing this one.
Thank you.
Just 1 second. I don't really, I understand why Jeff brought you here. I think after looking at Pitt's website, I understand, in these letters, I understand what you're trying to do here. Neil? Michael, do you have anything else to add? I don't really have any question. After looking at the website and these letter, I think I get it. See what you're trying to do. On that note, I'm gonna open it up to the public. Make a comment. I know, Brian, you're with the university. Okay. Just, okay. Harrisburg University. All right, and then, so if you could please, state your
Yeah,
full name and address.
my name is Joe Kowalczyk. I live at 567 Ridge Road in Lewisberry. But I own the properties. I own a lot of properties on that block. I've been there for 42 years. And Mr. Phipps, you pretty much understand where I was going through here. I mean, I still have bullet holes in windows from 5 magnums that were shot through my property. And these gentlemen, John, I know him for over a year now, and they seem to be real nice guys. I think if they do anything other than what was there in the past, God bless them, you know, because I mean, I literally lost 4 tenants, probably $40,000 of income and a lot of hardship trying to get those other people out of it. So I'm just here to say that I do support what they do, and I'm behind what they do.
Summers, I live on that street. Had business there for longer than I should. The only concerns I have is one of my hearing aids just went out, so I'm not hearing it. But remind me, with past experiences, even when my hearing aids were on the nightstand, weekends I couldn't sleep. It went till 4 o'clock in the morning every weekend, and I don't want to go through that. And if they're going to be on the block, I would be the first to welcome them. And there is a courtyard which is connected to the properties. And if they should want to use that courtyard, it's open to them. They just have to follow the rules of the courtyard. And within those guidelines, if I can sleep at night, I'm happy. And if I hear you're gonna have a gallery, I had a gallery there 14 years and I enjoyed it. So I'm glad to see that kind of thing come back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we move on, I did skip one of my questions in here that I like to keep to. Do you agree with the facts and the issues that were stated by the zoning administrator earlier on? And are you okay with the conditions that were put on?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Neil, good? Yeah. All right, then I'm going to make a motion to approve with the conditions set forth in the planning commission's resolution for approval. Do I have a second? Seconded by Ms. Bianco. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck.
I believe that ends our agenda for the night. I'm going to make a motion to adjourn. Seconded by Mr. Brown. All in favor?
Aye. Thank you for